Okay.
WKNO-FM Memphis, WKBQ, WKBL Covington, Tennessee, and you're listening to Jimmy Deal on Celebrity Spotlight.
All right, that's my friend Rob Grayson. Rob, thank you so much. I know he's going through some health issues
Rob
right
Grayson
now.
From
There you go.
WKNO-FM Memphis, WKBL, WKBQ Covington, Tennessee, and you're listening to My Brush with Greatness, Jimmy Deal on Celebrity Spotlight.
So I want to wish Rob all the best. He's going through some health issues right now, but he's my good friend down in Memphis, Tennessee, some radio stations. And thank you, Rob. I appreciate your little intro there. And I wish you all the get well wishes in the world. Also, welcome to Celebrity Spotlight, Roger Hendricks Simon, actor, producer, director, and of course, you're from the film Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps, the sequel to Wall Street. Great to have you with us. How are you, Roger?
Jimmy, thank you. Thank you for having me on this day where we had the eclipse.
Yes.
So I'm a special event. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I lived through it.
Did you get to go out and see the eclipse today, Roger?
I did. I did it the old-fashioned way. I did it on television. That's the
you did. Okay. Okay, there you go. That works as well.
You don't need glasses. I did that without the glasses.
Yeah, I know you just wrapped up a show. This is not a time of peace. That was on at Theater 2 on Theater Row here in New York City. You received great reviews. You're currently in 4 feature films. Tell us about that and some of the projects you're currently working on.
Well, Jimmy, I like to be busy. I guess everybody mostly likes to be busy, but in recent years, a lot of acting has come my way again. So that's been very gratifying. And recently, I just finished a film with Kevin Bacon called Connaissance. And at the same time, I was performing in an off-Broadway production, which I was very proud of. And that was This Is Not a Time of Peace by Deb Margolin, directed by Jerry Heyman, on Theater Row, particularly because I played the role of a man based on the playwright's father, who lived to be 100, passed away a little over a year ago. And he was a scientist, and this character was 84 years old. And like her father, this character was being indicted by Senator Joe McCarthy during the 1950s. And so it really dealt with some very important issues and things that I think are unfortunately not the past only. We seem to always have problems with things like that. And so it's a powerful role and a powerful play. And I hadn't, I've been playing some really good roles, but I don't think I'd ever had one, Jimmy, that demanded the emotional range that this part demanded. It was very gratifying to do. It was not only a sizable role, but one that really I had to go from A to Z and all the emotions and find the jokes as well. I always like to think, and I always say to people that I work with in my studio where I train actors, directors, writers, I say, if you have a serious role and you have a serious play or a film, find the jokes. Find the jokes, because the other stuff is there.
Right.
But so I tried to do that with that role, and I hope I did.
I want to ask you, what was it like working with Kevin Bacon? What does he like to work with on screen?
He's a gentleman, first and foremost, not only just a talented man, but a great gentleman. Mm-hmm. I shot the first day, the first part of the film, and they drove me out to where the location was, and I was playing. For some reason, they cast me as an old man. I don't know why, Jimmy. I don't understand. There I am on set, and the location was an old home out in Long Island,
right,
where Kevin's character comes out to to find some people that he needed to deal with in the film. And I when I went on the set, I said to the director and Kevin, I said, guys, this is home. And as I was being guided to my dressing room, all I saw were just all these old people. I said, why did you need me? I mean, you got plenty of old people out here. You don't need to bring me out here to do this. And they said, well, Raj, we thought we'd get an actor. I said, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Uh-huh.
There were all these people, you know, it was in the environment, and it was we didn't have to do much in terms of stretching our imagination. It was in that old home.
Right.
So it was fun. It was actually fun to be with him and his wife, Cara Cedric. I didn't have a scene with her, though.
Okay.
But they're a great couple.
Right. Some other films you worked on, Linoleum, right? And Love in Kilnary?
Yes. In the last few years, the films have been coming. Up until then, I've been primarily a theater actor in New York,
right,
and London, and across the country and overseas. But all of a sudden, the films started to come, and the two you mentioned, Linoleum. Don't ask me what it means. Everyone says, "What is linoleum? Why did you call it? How did I don't know? I mean, except that it, to me, it's a science fiction film.
Right.
I played the father of the comedian actor Jim Gaffigan, which was a real pleasure to be his dad. It deals with with a man Jim plays who is a very frustrated little man, very much kind of like a Walter Mitty in a small Ohio town. He has a little cable show, public access science show, and he feels his life hasn't gone anywhere, and he wants very much to be a bigger person and whatever in his mind. His marriage is falling apart.
Oh boy.
And basically, it's about dreams. In fact, both films are about the fulfillment of dreams, in my opinion, because in order to become this big man in his mind, he gets the idea, why don't I build a rocket in my garage? Because an actual rocket falls from the sky and lands right in his backyard. And he says, why don't I build a rocket? And of course, his father, which I play, is a former scientist, aeronautical scientist who worked with astronauts.
Oh, wow.
And I am in this, I have Alzheimer's, and he's put me in this rehabilitation place. Right. And in order to build a rocket, he feels, well, I better get him out of there and he'll help me. He'll help me build this rocket. And so I do that. He gets me and I go home with him and together we build this rocket. And I won't give the whole story. It's just, it really is a very heartwarming and funny and very human story about a man fulfilling his dreams, which is not and never easy.
Oh, I'm sure.
And the Love in Kilnary is a film that I did also with very much that theme. And that deals with a group of senior citizens in a small kind of fishing town.
Right.
Rural, regular people. And they have a problem because the fishing industry is in danger because they're dying, and in the water, the problem in the water, the fish are dying. And so the government comes to the town and tells them they're going to put this chemical in to save the fish. There's only one little problem, Jimmy, with this, and that is they found in testing that the chemical, it makes the fish They try it on. They try it on these mice.
Right, right.
It makes the mice very horny.
Really? Oh boy.
And of course, the senior citizens go, "What? This is awful. What do you mean? We're gonna, at our age, we're gonna be drinking the water, and it's gonna make." And of course, the film. Again, I'm not going to tell you the ending, but it's quite a ride that my character takes, and he does a complete transformation from taking the water, and just to say it ends happily.
Well, it sounds like a great film, and both films had extended runs, right, in New York City and Los Angeles, at selected theaters as well, nationwide. It's also seen on Amazon Prime, right?
Yes, you can get them both on Amazon Prime and other streaming networks as well. I'm very proud of both films, and Colin West directed Linoleum. He also wrote it.
Right.
And Daniel Keith wrote and directed Love in Culinary. They're both independent films, Jimmy, that were done on a dime.
Oh, wow.
These are, you're working for the love of the movie. Everybody got paid, but it was this is not a studio film. These were done with first-rate actors, but basically you're not working for the big bucks. You're working because you believe in that material, you believe in the role, and you're taking a real, you're taking a calculated risk when you do anything, but particularly when you're doing independent film.
Right. And you've done a lot of independent films, right? I mean, you work on independent films all the time, right?
It's the best way, Jimmy, to get, if you have written or you believe in something, and you're working as I do with young talent. And by young talent, that doesn't necessarily mean they're in their 20s or whatever. There's young talent of any age.
Right, right.
But if somebody is talented and has a project, to have to wait for that phone to ring, or to have to wait for that $5 million to be raised, and that's nothing today, $5 million to make a film. It can be very depressing, and it can hold you back from doing the work you love. So, because I have always worked with young writers of all ages, and by young I mean talented people, to develop projects. In my studio as part of the training also, because actors and directors and writers being together in training develop projects. And these are no-name people. These are not established people. These are people with great talent. But the independent film is a place where that kind of talent can have an opportunity. It's the hard way. Everything's hard, but when you do an independent film, you're really scraping together and to try and make it look technically like it's a studio film.
Yes, absolutely.
You really that's a trick, and you have to develop that talent. So my focus has always been combining my professional craft as far back as Yale Drama School and the Yale Rep, where I was a founding member, and trying to combine my desire to be a director and an actor in theater and film, with training. For me, it's gone hand in hand. And for me, the best teachers I ever had, Jimmy, were not just teachers. They were people that were simultaneously, while they were teaching, they were also directing and acting in film and theater. And they would come from just having done a film or a play, or even while they were working on a film or a play, and they would be teaching me while they were doing it. And there was a certain energy that, because they were doing that I found very unique. And something, as a student, when I was with them, I said, if I ever teach, that's the kind of teacher I want to be. I don't want to just teach without having the work also. And I also don't want to just act and direct, because I also love teaching. And I always want to combine those two. And that's what I always try to do.
Tell us about the assignment studio. How long has it been since you had it going on? It's been a long time since you've been had the assignment studio, right?
It's been going 46 years,
Wow,
which
46
is
years.
pretty good because I'm only 27 years old. That's not a bad, So,
Right.
but Jimmy, it started in 1978 in New York City, where I still am.
Right.
But it really started because I always loved the idea of teaching.
Right.
I also needed a place to hang my hat. I was at that time traveling around the damn world. I was going,
Right. You
and
worked in a lot of different countries too, right? India, I mean, all over the place. The UK.
yes, yes. At that time, I got out of Yale. I got out of the Yale School of Drama. It sounds like getting out of a penitentiary. I got out of Yale School of Drama. It was in 1967, 68. I got my degree from Yale School of Drama as a director and an actor, and then went to. I got an opportunity to go to London, and at that point, in that time frame, there was a real hunger for the American off-Broadway type of approach to theater in
Right.
London.
Mm-hmm.
So I was finding myself in a place where they wanted to have that, which
Right.
meant I was getting really great opportunities. And so I took advantage of that. I stayed there for about 3 years, directing at the Royal Court Theatre in London and
Wow.
other theaters, and then going to from London to Europe for festivals, and then from London also having the opportunity to go to places like Iran, India, Pakistan, Nigeria, South Africa. In that period of time, to work with the actors, directors, and writers of those countries at the invitation of those countries. So, Jimmy, I was learning more in that period of time than any school could
Right.
ever give me, and I was also learning more than I was giving them.
Right.
I was very.
What were they like to work with in those other countries? Was it similar to working with directors here in the United States?
It's a great question because what I found was once you get into a room
Mm-hmm.
with actors, directors, writers, people of your own training
Right.
and your own interest, um, the cultural thing is always there. And there are great cultural differences, and there were problems. There's always that, and
Right.
particularly the political thing in international relations and what have you.
Of
But
course.
once you start talking to them about what you have in common, and you get into the work, you just start working. All of a sudden, you're no longer an Indian or an American or you're no longer an African American, or you're no longer an African, or you become an artist,
Right.
and you're just dealing with what you both know, and it doesn't really matter. And particularly, I remember being in when I went to Pakistan,
Mm-hmm.
um, in Lahore and Islamabad and Karachi. I was there,
Right.
and I got there the day after they hung Bhutto. They had just hung him after he'd been in jail. This was
Oh, wow.
the head of it. And
Right.
so I walked into the room for the first day of work. Everybody looked like I didn't know what had happened. I didn't read the paper. I just got in there, and I said, "What did I say? I'm sorry. Did I do something that you look like this? You all look like you're dying." And they said, "Well," they showed me the paper, and I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I said, "But can we start?" I mean,
Right.
and all of a sudden, we just worked. And I remember in South Africa, in Johannesburg in 1976,
Oh,
I
wow.
was there right before the Soweto uprising.
Right.
And I went into the workshop space that they gave me in Johannesburg. And there were black, white, Indian, all colors of the rainbow, which I'm used to.
Right, right.
So I figured nothing. I said, "Oh, great, let's get to work." And everybody seemed really uneasy. And I said, "I'm sorry, did I do anything?" I said, "I don't mean to. I mean, this is the first." They said, "No, Roger, you don't understand. This is the first time we've ever been allowed to be in a room together."
Oh, wow.
So I
Amazing.
said, "Of course." Oh my God, Well, there's always a first time.
Yeah.
And we went right to work. And after about 10 minutes, and it was the first time they had ever worked. They knew each other. They all
Right.
knew each other because they were actors in Johannesburg. But they were never at that time allowed. This was just before the whole revolution and Soweto uprising. So they were great experiences for me. I grew a lot, I think, as a person,
Right.
not just as an artist.
Right.
And I would say anytime you get a chance to do anything international in your work, take advantage of that, because it just makes you see things differently. When I pick up a newspaper and I read about things in the paper today, I go, I was there. Oh my God, and it's very different than when you're just reading something in a newspaper.
Right.
When you've been there, you have a whole different sense of it. And sometimes I wish artists had more say in international relations,
Right.
rather than politicians.
Yeah, it's amazing how the work just brings everybody together. That's amazing.
It does, and any kind of show business, entertainment thing, people who, I mean, it always brings people together. It's one of the great things of being in show business, and having that. It's a great feeling when you're working together. So it's great for diplomacy. It's great for a lot of things, other than just being entertained.
I wanted to ask you about the very beginning. How do you get involved in acting? I know your dad was involved in acting, right? He worked for Paramount. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I always say if you grow up with a bunch of lawyers in a family, it's hard not to be a lawyer, and or doctors, whatever.
Right.
I never knew anything but artists. My parents were both in the theater. My father was first he was a concert pianist when he was very young, but then he became at a very young age. He was like the Hirschfeld of the 1930s, covering all the opening nights on Broadway, doing cartoons, working with a young kid named Walter Winchell. Who together, George S. Kaufman was a young kid. They were all covering the Broadway scene. My dad was used his art because he was at that age. He was the cartoonist for the New York Daily News, the Daily Mirror. He would do illustrations of the stories that were in those papers, and then covered and did cartoons of every opening night with bylines and what have you. So I grew up with that, all that history of the 1930s. I was born in 1942, but this was part of my heritage, and all the posters that he did for Mike Todd, George Abbott, the Broadway posters that were in Schubert Alley, they were always around our home. It wasn't just being with actors or directors, it was living and being brought up with history.
Sure.
So I had that in my blood, I guess you could say. And to this day, in my training at the Simon Studio, which is where I do the training, I try to instill in people that you don't just want to be an actor. You don't want to just study acting. Where did you come from? Where does that come from? Don't you? What's the background that you come? Where did this? Young people today, many of them are not interested.
Yeah.
They just want to get an agent, and they you know
You want to do movies.
right, and they want to get right into it.
Yeah.
And you can't blame them. It's a very expensive time to live, and you know they don't want to put that time into it. It's too expensive, and it takes time. And so I try to give them as much background also, as well as giving them the craft in terms of writing, directing, acting, because I think that's important. So I grew up in that, Jimmy, and our home was always an art studio.
Right.
And my mother also was a jack of all trades in summer stock, worked with Ethel Barrymore, worked
Oh,
with
wow.
all those Sam Levine. There were always stories. She was an apprentice. She was a costume and hat designer backstage and all that. And I grew up with all that. And then when I got married, my wife and my kids, they're all artists.
Yeah. Your wife was a playwright, right?
My wife, who passed away in 2017, we were married for 45 years.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. When we met, she was an opera singer in the extra chorus at the Met and also at New York City Opera. And she was a writer, always writing. She developed into a playwright and a screenwriter. And with our kids, we actually used our home as a location for many films. My son, particularly, Dan Simon, still is why I work a lot. I say to you, Jim, and to everybody listening, if you really want to keep working, have kids. You get work from your kids. You have to wait a while,
Right.
but you're gonna get work from your kids. And it you know, we would make movies, and Dan was the technical guy, and he did all the, you know, when he was growing up. And we all were in the films. We all would write them together and then produce them. And all our friends in the neighborhood were in those films. And even now, that Oliver Stone film came about because he saw the first feature I did, which I had the lead role in, called The Sublet, which was a little independent film.
Right.
And that happened because my son Dan had worked with that director and said to the director, asked my son Dan, "Do you know any older actors? I can't get Jack Nicholson's no longer acting." So Dan said, "Why don't you audition my dad?" And so I got it through my son.
Wow.
So that was the background. I was always among artists. I never thought of it being special or different. A lot of people say, "Wow, you know, that's really, you know, gee, where'd you get all that art and everything?" I said, "Well, it was just, that was the way we lived."
Yeah.
And that's still the way we live. My kids, they're all artists, and it's nothing special to us. You know, that was it. That was the way it was.
When you were in high school too, you did plays and stuff like that, and that really also got you going and started in the business as well.
You know, Jim, I was lucky enough that when I was in high school, and I still tell people when they say, "Who was the best director you ever worked with?" And I say, "John Hemmerly." And they go, "Who the hell? Who's that?"
Right.
Well, he was the Scarsdale High School drama director.
Oh, wow.
And I learned so much about how to act, how to direct from his approach. And it showed me that it doesn't matter on what level, whether it's Broadway or off Broadway, talent is talent is everywhere. And some of the best people you work with, they don't have to be a big Broadway. This guy had a way that he could bring out the best performance in you. I never had a director who could do that. And he was basically a listener. And he taught me the value of listening, not talking, not giving you necessarily all the direction. In fact, it was always frustrating, Jimmy, because he would always give direction to the other actors, and I'd have to say, well, don't you have anything to say to me? And he'd say, you're doing okay. I would say, and he'd say, it taught me that if you have nothing to say, it's not so bad. Sometimes just let it go.
Right.
A lot of directors have to keep talking. They want to, you know, they want to seem like they're directing. The high school at Scarsdale High School, that program was just great. The quality of the students there. Many of their parents were in the business. There were a lot of producers and directors and actors who lived in Scarsdale, and they supported the program and the Scarsdale Players, the community theater, and so it was a great environment. And it was one of those high schools where if you were in the drama department, you were almost as big as the captain of a football team.
Right. Of course, you went to Yale, right? And you also taught at Yale and Juilliard. Is it important for an actor to go to a great school like Yale or Juilliard to succeed in acting?
It doesn't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm very lucky, Jimmy. I had the opportunity to go to the Yale School of Drama. I directed and taught at Juilliard for a period. Mm-hmm. I see the value of that. But I do say that there's no substitute for actually doing the work. The best training, and the problem is not everybody can get the opportunity of Ron Howard. You mentioned earlier when we were talking.
I worked on Ransom with Ron Howard.
Ron learned on the set.
Yes.
I mean, if you have a father or an uncle or somebody who just puts you in a movie,
right?
I mean, you're going to learn. Yes, it's very valuable to have a really good training program, I think. But I always say the best training I got was after I left my training, and I started putting my hands into the work and had to survive. What training doesn't do, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I don't know. But what they don't do enough, I think, is teach you how to survive.
Yes.
And that is something, as whether you're a comedian or singer or whatever you are, it's hard knocks. Yeah. And you learn by failing. A lot of times you fail, and you don't learn by succeeding. And you've got to make a go financially. Somehow you have to find a way to keep eating and having a roof over you somehow, or at least a blanket over you. Right. Training doesn't give that to you.
Yeah. We talked about I was cut out of a scene in Ransom that I worked on. Of course, I didn't work the next day when they reshot the scene with Ron Howard and Mel Gibson. And that's not such a bad thing, like you were telling me earlier.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you learn the hard way. I think that the most you learn it the hard way. And I've been very fortunate, Jimmy, and I've been able to go from one thing to the other. Mm-hmm. But I would never say don't get trained, and I would also say don't just train when you're young. The training of you as an artist and a craftsman, I emphasize craft, because art is about this much.
Right.
If you're lucky that you can say that's the art. Mostly it's the craft of how you go about the work. That's what you're learning. The art, most of the work is not art. Most of the work, you're lucky if it's half good. I mean, most of it fails. And so to be able to just keep going and to not let any rejection, which God, you're going to get rejected all the time.
Absolutely, in this business for sure.
The best people have very tough skin, I think.
Yeah. But
they have to have vulnerability also underneath. And it's that curious mixture of those two things, that tough skin, that vulnerability that somehow gets you through and makes it work.
Right.
Easier said than done. And I think the training, some of my best people are people in their senior years.
Really? Wow.
Sure, because the best actors, Jimmy, and the best artists, I think, know that training never stops.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a master's degree from the Yale School of Drama, great. But now you're out there. But every time you get a role, every time you've got to get coached. You've got to go back and if you haven't worked for a while, you got to get the cobwebs off.
Right.
You got to get back into hopefully the Simon studio. But
Right.
wherever you go, you never have enough training, and you keep growing. You keep growing, and you keep hopefully the attitude that you haven't learned anything yet.
Yeah.
The more you know, the less you know. My students teach me more than probably I teach them.
Wow.
And I learn, I'm constantly learning by teaching. It's one of the most gratifying and exciting things. Otherwise, why would you teach? To make $1 million? Hello?
Yeah, not going to happen there.
No, thank you. So, it's teaching's a craft.
Right.
And sometimes it becomes an art, but it's a craft. I've worked at it a long time. Hopefully, I'm sometimes pretty good at it. I think, and hope. And you have to love that. You have to love that craft, and you have to love it. But I'm still learning, and that's what keeps me maybe young. Maybe that's what keeps me young. People say I seem younger than what I am. 81 years young, I like to say.
You don't look 81 at all.
But I think that's what keeps you young. Once you feel you know enough,
mm-hmm.
I think you're in trouble.
Right.
I think you're in trouble.
Early on, you worked with a lot of great people too, like John Travolta and James Earl Jones, James Woods. What was that like? Bring us back to that time when you were working with them, when they were very young actors just starting out.
It's very gratifying to see somebody when they're young become who they are later. And yes, to have worked as an actor and a director with the people you mentioned,
right,
and coached some of them, it was very gratifying. In the case of John Travolta, he was 17.
Wow.
And I was working at New Dramatists in New York on a new play by Martin Duberman, who was a wonderful playwright,
mm-hmm.
Who wrote the play we were working on was called Dudes. It was 3 one-act plays. His best-known work was, I'm trying to remember that. Anyway, I'll remember in a second. But
that's okay.
John came in. And just a charming young man. And he always has been that.
Nice guy. Yes, I've met him. Great guy.
I think his success, yes, he's talented, very talented, but everybody loved him. And that never hurts, Jimmy. Yeah. I mean, he always had that. People just love him. And he was, to give you a really weird story, I had to fire him.
Wow.
I hired him, and he was in this play, and I loved working with him. And every day I would call out there with the rehearsal schedule to New Jersey, where his family was. And his mother would get on the phone, Mrs. Travolta. And I would say, "Hi, Mrs. Travolta, here's the schedule for John." "Oh, yes. Isn't he the best actor you've ever worked with? Isn't he great?" She was like a super mom agent, really.
Wow.
But you need that support.
You need that support, of course.
He had that.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. Yeah, the support. You got to somehow find it. If it's not from your family, you better find it elsewhere. You
Right.
develop a family. You develop that. He had that. And he came in. He was beautiful. But then after the show, we did it.
Right.
Edward Albee, the playwright, and Richard Barr, the producer, saw it, and they wanted to move it out to East Hampton to the John Drew Theater for the summer.
Okay.
Part of a commercial run.
Right.
We couldn't hear John past the third row.
Really? He's very soft-spoken.
I mean, he at that time, he was very young, and he didn't have that voice.
Right.
So we had to let him go.
Oh, wow.
Years later, I'm out at Paramount in LA,
Right.
sitting in on Cheers and watching, and the door opens where I'm in the gallery where I'm sitting, and in walks John Travolta with Kirstie Alley. They had just finished a movie together, and I'm going, oh no. This is terrible. This is terrible. And I start looking for a seat I can go under to hide.
Right.
And he's walking right toward me. And I'm going, oh, no. And he goes right through my row, and he goes, hi, Roger. And I go, oh, hi, John. And I was like, I felt like I was 7 years old. I said, boy, John, to talk about not knowing who to fire. He said, wait a minute. He says, Roger, he says, I was 17. I said, I wasn't ready. He said, you had every right. He said, besides, Roger, you don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
I was in awe of you. I was intimidated. I said, what? You were intimidated by me? He said, yeah, Roger, you went to Yale. I said, oh, no. To him, Yale School of Drama, 17.
Right.
So it was a thrill to I mean, and then he wrote me a beautiful letter after I did my first film.
Nice.
And so he's a great human being.
He is, yeah. Great guy.
And John Lithgow, the same. These are great people.
Yeah.
So it is a thrill to always work with names, even if they're starting out.
Right.
I've worked with names when they haven't started out as well, but I think when they're starting out, it's exciting to see where they're going, and you can usually tell that they have something. You usually they've got it. You can tell, and that's a wonderful feeling to be able to do that with somebody when they're just starting, and but the fact that they're great people, I think, is part of their talent.
Yes.
I really believe that.
Yeah, we have a question from a listener, Tom Payton, who wants to know what Roger's most challenging role and most enjoyable role was. What was your most challenging and enjoyable role?
Well, maybe it's just because I came off these projects recently, but I would say the most enjoyable roles that I have had as an actor was this recent play that I just did off Broadway, the Deb Margolin play. It was just emotionally the most challenging and the most sizable and most emotionally challenging. Mm-hmm. And the other most enjoyable role that I recently played was in Love and Kilnary, where I had to go from this grumpy old man into a new kind of pseudo Robert Goulet, a big stud from this grumpy old guy. It was a lot of fun. Love and Kilnary, and I won the Best Supporting Actor award for that from the International Film Association. So I'm very proud of that. And that that film is on Amazon Prime, and it's something I'm very proud of. And so those are the two I would say the most fun and rewarding. Maybe because they're the most recent. If you asked me that when I was 25, I'd give you another answer.
There you go. Also, I have to ask you about Wall Street. Money Never Sleeps. Working with Michael Douglas. You had some great scenes with Michael. Tell us about working with Michael Douglas. That had to be fun.
Michael is first and foremost a real professional.
Mm-hmm.
He would stay by himself a lot because he had a lot to prepare.
Right.
I would talk to him occasionally, and I actually said, Michael, would you like to go back into theater? Because I remember you as a theater actor, and you were great. Did you ever want to do another play? And we talked a little bit about that and his wife and how they might want to do something. He was at the time we were shooting that film. It was around the time he was having awful problems. We didn't know that with his son.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
And that was very tragic.
Yeah.
It was before, I think he got sick, but he had that trouble, but you never knew it.
Wow.
You never knew it. And he never brought any of that into the rehearsal room. And, sometimes people don't think of films as rehearsals.
Right.
They think, you just get up there and the director says, okay, stand over here. Okay, action. But in the case of that film and most of the films that I've been fortunate enough to do,
right,
rehearsal is part of it. And Oliver Stone rehearsed each scene like a play, meaning we would sit around the table at his office, and there would be Josh Brolin, Frank Langella, Michael Douglas, myself, Shia LaBeouf, Carey Mulligan. We'd all be sitting around throwing the lines. And then Oliver would give notes, and then we'd do it again. And then this would be often a week before we would shoot the scene. Not every director will do that. And Michael was, he comes from theater. Everyone knows his father, Kirk Douglas, as a film actor, but he also was an actor from the theater. So their background was theater. And it was very much, I would call him a consummate professional, somebody who really knows the craft. He's not just a pretty face and somebody who has charm. He has the craft, and a gentleman, a real gentleman.
Yeah.
So I can't say enough, and also a great producer.
Yeah.
A man who, I think, many of the best actors. I mean, you don't know this, but often they have to produce. Many actors don't want their name up there as producer, obviously, but they create their own projects, and that's part of surviving. I think if you want to be an actor, you've got to. I always say to actors, try to direct, and try to produce. Create your own work. Create your own work. Don't wait for the phone to ring. Michael Douglas is that kind of guy. He finds his own projects and makes it. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I want to mention also you are the creative producer of a 6-minute award-winning documentary about your senior softball team. Tell us about that. How did that come about?
For me, I've always been a sports fanatic. And it's interesting that I never was a great jock. I was never a great athlete. I was pretty good on the level of intramurals. And I love playing and I love watching, particularly baseball.
Right.
And it so happens that when my family moved to the city of Poughkeepsie, upstate, I was introduced almost immediately by the mayor of Poughkeepsie to the idea that there was a senior softball league. I said, what? And she said, yeah, why don't you join? I said, wow, a senior softball league. So I put my name, I finally found how to do it. I found, and I put my name in. I had to wait a year because it's so popular. And I got into it. And I hadn't played ball for many years. I used to have a team in Central Park, my studio, the Simon Studio. We had a team in Central Park.
Right.
And in high school and junior high and elementary school, I always played intramural type of things. So I started playing, and I said, wait a minute, I'm enjoying this. And maybe I think there's a film in this, because it's not just softball.
Right.
What do people think about people that are senior citizens? It's getting better now, Jimmy, but there's still the idea that once you get to be a senior citizen, you sit in a rocking chair, you get a beer, and you sit back and you look at the paper, and you watch the cars go by.
Right.
And and I said, I don't feel like that.
Right.
And neither do these guys. Yeah, we're all bandaged up. Everybody's got ailments.
Right.
But not only are they playing, Jimmy, but there's some really good athletes who never stop playing, which means they can still hit the ball. They can still throw hard. These are not, when I first told people about it, they said, oh, how cute. Oh, isn't that cute? You're a senior, you're playing ball. And I said, well, you come out and watch. And they come out and watch, and they go, oh my God, because we want to win too. And it's very competitive. And so I brought out a crew, and we shot a small documentary, and I called it The Boys of Late Summer, because there is that book called The Boys of Summer about
right.
So we're the boys of late summer.
That's great.
And we made this film, and it stars all the guys in my team, in my league. I submitted it to the Newport Beach Film Festival out in California. It got selected. It won a nice award. It now has a premiere in New York City.
Coming up in May, right?
May 24th, the end of May, for the new Plaza Cinema is going to be showing it.
Awesome.
I'm very excited, and we're still showing it. The other thing, Jimmy, is I found that my love of sports and playing is very much a part of my work as an actor and a director. I believe the best actors, they don't have to be in shape. They have to be in great shape. Their bodies have to be tuned enough,
right,
that they can get up at 4 every morning to do a film if they have to,
right,
at any age. They have to have a voice, and a voice doesn't come from a body that's not in tune. So sports and acting and performing are very much in line. And there are some great athletes that are really great performers. I think professional sports figures, they're performers. Look at how many thousands of people are watching them. So they've got to be a bit of a performer.
Yeah, I mean, you got like The Rock now. I mean, there's so many of them out there. John Cena.
You got it.
Right.
You got it.
Yeah.
And so I'm very proud of the film. And I'm I now not only, I play on 4 teams now. I play Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday mornings in Poughkeepsie.
Wow, that's great.
And then I've been selected, and I'm very proud to be on a kind of all-star 80s team that travels to tournaments around the country.
Nice.
And we play other 80s team. The only challenge, Jimmy, is we sometimes can't find enough teams to play. You got to be 80 to 85. So, yeah.
We were talking about this earlier before the interview. I mean, you've done National Public Radio, right? Sirius XM. Tell us a little bit about that. Working in radio. Do you enjoy doing radio as well?
I love radio, and I kind of think radio is the only way now. One of the only ways, if not the only way, of keeping the spoken word alive. Mm-hmm. We're such a visually oriented society, Jimmy. Right. Everything is visual. Everything is the colors and the shapes and everything is fast, and it's all the visual. And I think if you're not just actors, if you're going to speak lines, or if we want to have an articulate populace,
right,
then vocabulary and the spoken word and how we address each other. It's been lost. Emails don't do it. There's no writing anymore. It's all emails.
I know.
It's all abbreviations. So radio, it may be old-fashioned to young people,
Right.
but I try to instill in young people the beauty of the spoken word, the music of language, the sounds of words. You know, as a radio person, it's a very special art form. And you can do so much more than you can with television, going deeper into things, I think. And so I first learned about radio drama when I was in London directing at the Royal Court, and I met some people and made friends with the BBC. And I used to be invited over there and got to know how they did radio drama. And I saw that in London, when you pick up the London Times,
right,
and you look at the art page, right on the front page, there's a review of a radio drama. Well, you don't see that in this country.
Right.
But in London, radio drama, it's big.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I said, when I go back to New York, I'm going to see what I can do. And I started developing my studio in my training and developing projects. And we got into doing radio drama at WBAI in New York.
Sure. I know.
I would first do the play on a stage, rehearse it with my actors.
Right.
After we had performed it in front of an audience, I would then bring it into WBAI. We would do it live.
Nice.
And we would do it in one take. And they couldn't believe it because they said, well, no editing? How did you do it that way? Unbelievable. I said, well, we did it, rehearsed it. We did it in front of an audience. We pruned it. We played it in front of audiences. So that's how it got started. Then National Public Radio heard us, and they invited us and commissioned us to do a series on NPR called Simon Studio Presents. I took my playwrights that I were developing. I made them the core of the series. We got a grant from the National Endowment. We did a Christmas special. It went on for, I'd say, 3-4 years. Then it went to Sirius XM radio for a spell.
Nice.
And now I have to say, you don't hear any radio drama much now. It's become audio drama. Yeah. It's in the sky. It's on the internet now.
Exactly. Yes.
You don't. Very rarely we used to have a regular time slot on radio on WNYC, and it played across the country on NPR.
Oh wow!
I don't hear hardly any of it. It's now become audio drama,
right?
And it's on the internet, which it's not quite for me the same. And a lot of it is science fiction, and it deals with all kinds of creative sounds. The emphasis doesn't seem to me to be on the words and the story as much as the special effects in these spectacular sound things. I really love just an actor and a microphone and a story, just a plain story. And that may be old-fashioned, but I think we've lost that in our culture, and I think it's worth fighting for.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
But I don't, I have to say also that it's a fight, because the radio drama, most people, when you say radio drama, they say, oh yeah, Stella Dallas, The Shadow Knows. They go to the well-known, the old nostalgia stuff.
The old Superman shows, right?
Yes, and they're great. I mean, I love hearing some of the old radio dramas.
Right.
But the future of good writing and good drama has to be the new stuff.
Right.
And they're not giving enough to that.
Yeah.
They're scared with the new stuff. They want to do the old stuff because everybody says, oh yeah, let's hear the Superman and the whole thing. But yeah, let's try to keep that alive. And you're doing a lot by just doing what you do. Keeping radio alive, Jimmy, and I'm very grateful for you and for people that are doing that.
Oh, well, we try for sure. I want to, if anyone's just starting out in acting, or any actors are out there that want to work with you, tell us how they can get in touch with the Simon Studio and possibly work with you.
Thank you. We're always interested in new people. We have, since the pandemic, there's a new thing called Zoom. What is Zoom? I said to myself, what the H is Zoom? In
Right.
2000 and whatever, 19, when they said, Roger, because I was ready to close. I mean, what are you going to do during the pandemic? Who's going to come to do, work with you? And theaters were closing. So they said, try Zoom. Well, I had to become at least enough. I have 5 thumbs, but I had to become at least acquainted. And what I did was I found a way to put it on Zoom. So we do it both live and on Zoom, which means people from all over the country, all over the world can be part of our class and part of our training and observe and participate. So if anyone wants to do that and would like to fall on their ass on a regular basis with us, because that's how you learn.
Of course.
It is a laboratory. I call it the Simon Studio Professional Lab. We meet every week. Right now we're meeting on Thursday evenings. We meet sometimes on the weekend, sometimes on Sunday afternoons.
Mm-hmm.
And we do productions also during the year that come out of it. But the emphasis is on weekly work and growth. And also the emphasis is on actors, writers, and directors all in the same room rather than just a group of actors by themselves.
Right.
And also the emphasis is on people who just want to watch. That you can learn a lot. So for those that are interested, I'll give you, you can, I think emailing is probably the best way to contact me.
Right.
The email would be rhsstudio@gmail.com.
Great.
rhsstudio@gmail.com. The website is www.thesimonstudio.com, and that'll give you background and all kinds of videos about the work we've done for 46 years.
Amazing.
We meet in Manhattan on East 65th Street, right between First Avenue and York. Any directors, any writers, any actors, obviously, who are of all ages and all levels are invited to at least watch and hopefully participate. So that would be what I would give you to get in touch with us, and I welcome that. And I'm very proud that people have gone on from there to have careers and continue to do so. That's exciting, but I'm also proud that people who don't go on, because there's something to be said for using what we do as actors, directors, writers, in any profession.
Yes.
In any profession. I don't think people value that enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's for public speaking, for teaching, for anything. So we do that. I do it both privately, and I do it as group class as well.
Right.
So that would be great.
Well, thank you so much for all
anytime you want, Jimmy. You come. We'll get you back into acting, Jimmy.
Absolutely. I love to go back into acting. It was fun. I did it for a little while. I worked on some great productions, and it was mostly background work, but it was fun. Definitely was a fun time.
Well, we're going to get you out of that background. We're going to get you into the star roles, Jim.
Well, thank you, Roger. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. What an honor to talk with you tonight.
Jimmy, it's a pleasure. And I just keep doing what you're doing. It's a great contribution. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Roger. I appreciate it so much. You're always welcome to come back.
Thanks so much, Jim.
Okay. Have a fantastic night.
Okay, man.
Appreciate it so much. Take care.
Take care, man. Take care.
Bye-bye. Wow. What a great actor, director, writer. Roger's done it all. If you want to work with Roger again, it was the SimonStudios.com. What a great guy to work with. If you're going to be in this business, that's the guy to work with right there. I want to thank so many people for listening tonight. Producer Cindy sent me a whole bunch of people here. Jules Lavallee, of course, she is from the Red Carpet magazine. I was Red Silk Carpet magazine. I was in. She was listening to the show. We had Tom Payton was out there, right? We had Beryl and Michael. Thank you so much. I always appreciate you guys listening, and so many people that listen to the show every single week. Cindy Legron-Kankama, thank you so much. Coming up next week, we have another great show. So many more great people on the way here on Celebrity Spotlight. Let's see, we got there's another thing I wanted to talk about before I leave the air here tonight. Is this past weekend I went to the let's see, some of the people from Ancient Aliens. They did a show here in New Jersey. So I wanted to talk about that. I just want to thank all those guys. I got to meet the cast. They were fantastic. It was Giorgio and Nick Pope, David and William, great guys. So that was fun. I also got to meet WABC radio talk show host Frank Morano was there at the show. So I got to talk with him. He's a great talent there at WABC, does the overnight show on a lot of nights. Great guy to listen to. If you're ever up in the middle of the night, check him out on 77 WABC. Frank Morano, great guy. Also coming up here next Monday, author, chef, fashion design, recording artist Sophia Diaz is going to be here. She was also in Red Silk Carpet magazine along with me. I was in there last, I guess it was February and March. And she's also part of that magazine. And Jules, of course, Lavely, who's listening tonight. Also coming up on the show, radio and television host Bob Eubanks will be here from the Newlywed Game. So I'm looking forward to that. Always loved watching Bob Eubanks on television. Also, Carrie Calvin is going to be here from Game Changer RS Productions. He is a CEO. He's a recording artist, a producer, CEO of Game Changer. R3 Productions. They're changing the game in Hollywood for sure. We'll talk all about that and some of the stuff he has going on. His father was one of the Shylights. They're going to get a star on the Hollywood. Actually, they have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. They're going to get a star on the Atlantic City Walk of Fame coming up in just a couple of weeks. So we'll talk all about that as well. Also, my friend, actress, Kay Wheel is going to be here. She was the Elvis's first fan club manager, producer, and also she's dated Elvis for a while. So I want to talk about that. So many great people coming up on the show. Rodney Allen Rippey, of course, we've had him on the show in the past. He'll be back again on the show. So I'm looking forward to that. And I want to thank you so much for listening every week. Appreciate it. And so we will catch you Monday for another great episode of Celebrity Spotlight. Everybody have a fantastic week and a great weekend, and we will see you again next Monday. Thanks for listening.